In the Nicomachean Ethics of Aristotle, Aristotle initiates his discussion by saying that every activity or every rational activity aims at some end or some good. And so Aristotle specifically notes that every art and every investigation, and similarly every action and pursuit, is considered to aim at some good. Now, thus, the good is defined as that which all things aim. That is, these are the words of Aristotle. The good is defined as that which all things aim. So Aristotle notes that every inquiry, pursuit, and action aims at some form of good, suggesting that all actions have an ultimate goal. Yet, Aristotle also notes that there are differences amongst the ends. So some activities are the ends themselves. That is, the activity is itself the end. On the other hand, in some cases, the activities are distinct from the ends. And in the view of Aristotle, in this case, the ends are superior to the activities themselves, when the activities and the ends are distinct from one another. Now, when the ends are distinct from the actions, the results, in the perspective of Aristotle, are superior to the activities. So, for instance, the end of medical sciences would be health. Health is superior to the activities of medical sciences. Similarly, the end of economic science is wealth. So, in this case, wealth is superior to the activity of economic sciences, keeping in mind that Aristotle views wealth as merely instrumental and certainly not the chief good or the highest good. Now, Aristotle then suggests that an end which we desire purely for itself and not for the sake of something else would be the highest good. That is, if we simply desire ends, if all our desires are ends for the sake of something else, that is, every goal that we desire is for the sake of something else, then we don't have an ultimate goal. And if you don't have an ultimate goal, then your life will be meaningless and ineffectual, in the words of Aristotle. So, in accordance to Aristotle, endless pursuits without a final good would render our desires meaningless. That is, Aristotle suggests that if we choose everything that we do for the sake of something else, then our own aim will be pointless and ineffectual, in the words of Aristotle. So one must recognize what the highest good is. And only if you recognize what the highest good is, can you make the highest good a goal and a target. So according to Aristotle, only if we know this chief or supreme good and have knowledge about it can we make it a goal. Now, Aristotle notes that the highest good is happiness or eudaimonia. He also notes that this is agreed upon by the ordinary individuals and the wise, in the words of Aristotle. So he likes to separate between cultured individuals and the wise, or the contemplative individuals, educated individuals. That's a theme of Aristotle, or something that he likes to do. However, Aristotle argues that if you were to ask the generality of mankind, that is the ordinary individuals, the non-cultured, that is, if you were to ask them what happiness consists of, then the answers that you would get will differ from that of the wise. But not only that, Aristotle also suggests that not only will the answers differ between the generality of mankind and between the wise, but also the answers of the generality of the mankind, or the generality of mankind, will differ in a temporal fashion. That is, at one point, one will answer you that the happiness consists of X, Y, and Z, or a certain thing, or A. And at another point, they'll tell you that happiness consists of B. That is, at one point, one might answer the generality of mankind, or someone from the generality of mankind might answer that happiness consists of wealth at some point, but another point they might tell you that it is health if they are, for instance, in a diseased state and recognize that health is important to them. I've mentioned earlier that for the differences between the Stoic and Aristotelian view on health, whereby Aristotle views health as a good, whereas the Stoics view health as a mere external and thus cannot be a good, because it does not depend on us entirely. It's not within our domain of control. That is, you can obtain disease in a fashion that's outside the domain of your control, and thus it's not a good for the Stoics, although that's for a different discussion. Now, Aristotle also argues that there must be a good that is the cause of whatever goodness exists in all other goods, and that this should be the ultimate goal. Now, Aristotle agrees that the good life, or happiness that is, or eudaimonia, must be internal and self-sufficient. That is, it does not rely on externals. So, for example, honor cannot be a goal because honor depends on externals, that is, reputation. So, similarly to Epictetus, whereby Epictetus argues in the dichotomy of control that reputation is outside the sphere of our control, and thus we ought to not worry about it. Similarly, Aristotle argues the same thing, that the good life or happiness must be completely internal and self-sufficient, because otherwise, if it depends on external circumstances or anything that is external, then the result is that happiness, or the ultimate good, or the chief good, will be at stake. I've mentioned in an earlier video how the Stoics differ in their perspective on what externals are. So, for example, as I mentioned just now, for the Stoics, health is an external. For Aristotle, he doesn't view it from that lens as much. So, for example, honor depends on the opinions of others and cannot be the good for which we strive for, because honor is conferred to us by others. We cannot confer it to ourselves. He argues that wealth, in addition, is merely instrumental, used for the sake of other things, so it cannot be the good that we strive for. He also argues that pleasure cannot be the ultimate good either. So the question becomes, first of all, what is the ultimate good? The ultimate good, in accordance to Aristotle, is happiness, or eudaimonia. And so, what is the reason for why happiness is the ultimate good? It's something that we have to delve into. In addition, what does happiness consist of? We mentioned how the generality of mankind will have differing opinions on what happiness consists of from the wise in the terms of Aristotle. Again, Aristotle likes to separate cultured wise from the generality of mankind. His way of arguing for his points of view. So for Aristotle, I'll answer it very briefly. Happiness is a virtuous activity of the soul. So happiness is the virtuous activity of the soul. And so in a later discussion, I'll discuss those questions in further detail, whereby I'll delve into why happiness is the ultimate goal, or the ultimate good, and why eudaimonia is the ultimate good, and what does happiness consist of.